This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. The Huskies Warming House podcast is also brought to you by the Soda Pod, home of NCAA college hockey news and more. Stay wild and up to date with new episodes throughout every week. Find them on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and other podcast platforms. And welcome into the Huskies Warming House podcast, episode 198. Nick Maxon alongside Noah Grant here on Super Bowl Sunday. Nick, this one is a rematch from a couple of years ago. Do you have your preliminary pick? I guess by the time this show comes out, I imagine we're going to have our answer, but do you have anybody that, I guess, here's the better question. With two teams who have been there quite a bit in recent, is there anybody you really cheer for, and is it the same team you think is going to win?
Oh boy, how do I answer this diplomatically? So because I'm an Iowa State guy, my heart goes more towards Brock Purdy in San Francisco. I don't know. It's tough to bet against the Chiefs. It really is. Love to see the 49ers win. I think a lot of the country is looking at the Chiefs now as the new Tom Brady, the new England Patriots. Yeah. So I think there's ironically more of a wave for the 49ers than I think there would be normally.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of cool to see an Iowa State quarterback win a Super Bowl. Also being that he was picked as Mr. Irrelevant, I think there's a lot of great storylines there. And just, proving people wrong. He's not a perfect quarterback. He's got his flaws, but he's endured and he has persevered through all the skepticism, and probably is in the right system under Kyle Shanahan. So if they can, I don't know, it's going to come down to their defense trying to stop Mahomes, and more importantly, it's going to be to stop the run. And how can San Francisco find ways to keep the Kansas City defense on the field? I think that's been underrated in terms of what they have done to get themselves here. It's a different Kansas City Chiefs squad. I think they're more complete than in years past on both sides of the ball. But as you said, when this episode does drop, we'll be able to look back on my sequence here and go, the hell are you talking about? So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it might be a close game. I feel like the 49ers maybe actually might have the better offense, which is kind of an odd thing to say because, Kansas City has been hot in the playoffs, but during the regular season, they weren't exactly a force to be reckoned with. But contrary to years past, Kansas City has had a really good defensive core that is young, but they've matured really quickly. So, it's going to be kind of an interesting little battle. It's like an okay offense for Kansas City goes against an okay defense for the 49ers, and then a really good offense for the 49ers plays a really good defense for Kansas City. So it's going to be interesting to see who can win that battle. I feel like the 49ers win, but I feel like they do it by 3. I don't think it's
going to be close.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big spread, but we've said that before, and then, Broncos, Seahawks. So
Seahawks, yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing.
So, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Just hoping for a good game, decent commercials. Those have fallen down the pit of misery in terms of the quality the last couple of years. But
yeah, I guess the girlfriend is excited for the halftime show, and it's not because Usher's playing. I think she told me. I think Justin Bieber's in the building yesterday, so he got there early, and she's hoping that we're going to see a guest appearance. Apparently, I kind of just sat there and listened. So it just seemed like the best plan for me. But speaking of plans here, we've got two Huskies hockey teams to talk about, one of which will be off this upcoming week. The men will have their bye week coming up in the middle of February here. And the other team could almost desperately use one, unfortunately. We'll talk about the women's team as well. But we'll start on the men's side, and we'll start with Center Ice View News and Notes presented by HuskiesIllustrated.com and the Soda Pod. Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to CenterIceView.com. Episode 198. Nick Max and Noah Grant here in the den. And Nick, we start on the men's side here. A St. Cloud team that, as we mentioned, is going to be off this upcoming week. Probably not the worst thing in the world. Maybe they could have used it this past weekend, but you know what? They did all right. Obviously, they did what they had to do in the NCHC as far as standings, as far as points.
And pairwise.
Yeah, certainly.
And pairwise.
Yeah, certainly. The other, you want to talk pairwise, by the way, big upset, national scores. I mentioned this in our group chat. How about number 56 pairwise, St. Lawrence beating 7 Quinnipiac? That's oof.
Yeah.
But
it's a blip. I mean, yeah, that hurts a bit, but they're going to be fine. If anything, it's going to put a chip on their shoulder. I mean, I just can't see them tripping over themselves anymore. I mean, every team has it. I mean,
yeah, they only dropped 2 spots. I mean,
yeah, they're going to be fine. So just, it's more of how does the team itself, mentally just be able to put that behind them, right? It's more of that than anything. You never have a perfect showing, throughout the season. You're never, impenetrable. So,
yeah.
And in theory, if you're going to trip, better to happen now. You have a couple of weeks still left in the regular season to kind of, get the dirty taste out of your mouth. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is interesting as we look at the Huskies sitting now at 14, technically tied for 13th by proxy. The team that they'll have in 2 weeks, Western Michigan, is 2 spots ahead of them right now in 11. This is, of course, as we've talked about, the NCHC, when we look at, standings wise, St. Cloud stayed pat with where they needed to and provided themselves some separation, especially with Denver, in their spot as well. I think they were off this week, if memory serves.
They were, yeah,
correct. So St. Cloud, staying pat with what they had to do. But at the same time, this Miami squad that we've talked about, they are not terrible, and I know that sounds odd. Like, what do you mean? They're last in the NCHC. Look at the standings that you have pulled up. Only 6 points for them. The next closest is Duluth at 20, Omaha at 23, Denver, CC, Western, all within that middle mix. St. Cloud improving to 36 points, 1 point behind North Dakota, with 2 games in hand for the Fighting Hawks. But when we kind of go back on the weekend, these were 2 hockey games, Nick, that St. Cloud wasn't necessarily. They were dominant in terms of the fact that they had much better offensive zone time, but Miami, pulled within a goal or two both nights and made things interesting. I mean, it wasn't an easy ride for St. Cloud. I don't think Oxford has been particularly kind to St. Cloud on the road. I feel like the games are much tighter there than they are necessarily on the bigger ice sheet at home, but Miami gave a good showing to North Dakota last weekend, and then, gave the Huskies a little bit of fits and made things interesting.
Isn't that the Sutterism? It's not that you win or lose, it's that how you're winning or losing. I mean,
yeah.
But in all seriousness, I saw in another group chat with us how somebody on the Twitter machine was complaining that Arizona State was one of 4 teams with 20 wins, and how are they ranked out of the top 16? And I just had a laugh inside my own head for that, because it's like, again, it's who you're winning against. If you put Stonehill 20 times and made the same argument, get the fuck out of my face. That's all I'm going to say about that. Not to say that Arizona State isn't a bad hockey squad. That's not what we're saying. But also the pairwise is set up. It isn't perfect, but to take into account the quality of opponents that you're playing, right? On that same token, to the opposite effect, Miami's record is a bit deceiving, right? It's just it's unfortunate for the Redhawks. We've talked about this time and time again, Noah, on this podcast, and how we want to see Miami get better in terms of their record, right? We've seen it over the years past, especially the last couple of years. They've been in hockey games. They've been close. Last weekend was potentially one of those franchise turning moments had they been able to hold off North Dakota, right? You just get the sense that if you're able to get a couple in a row, or get a big opponent, and you can get it however fashion, right? That's the sort of thing that this Miami Redhawk team needs. And again, it's not like they rolled over and played dead. We saw this 3 or 4 years ago up at the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. Was 7-1, 8-2. I mean, scored was way out of hand. Huskies got up early and they went into cruise control, right? This is not the same Miami Redhawk squad. It's just unfortunate for them. It is obviously for our St. Cloud fan base. You took care of business. It would have been pretty detrimental to your pairwise standings had you taken a loss in either of these games. But Miami's not a bad squad. Are they great? No, but they're trending in the right direction. They're fighting. They're not, shall we say, on the same rise in terms of the speed as, say, a Colorado College is. But they're starting to put some things together, and you just get the sense that they get a couple of ones strung together. Who knows?
Yeah, certainly would agree. They kind of remind me of the St. Cloud women's team maybe last year, where they're pushing in the right direction, but they just weren't quite there yet, although we'll get to them.
Right.
But on the men's side, of course, we kind of talked about it. A lot of teams off this weekend, and that'll flip-flop, of course, for the upcoming. So St. Cloud in action, of course, they win 5-2 and 3-1 to the Huskies. On the other side, Western Michigan, they win 6-1 in the first night, and then Omaha comes back with a 3-2 overtime final. If you're the Broncos, though, a couple of crucial points to kind of maintain pat in the standings, so to speak. And then upcoming in the following weekend, that's where the teams that played this weekend will now be off. North Dakota travels to CC, Denver travels to Minnesota Duluth. So essentially, your bye week is staggered, where the 4 teams that played are now off. The 4 teams that were off are now going to play. So pretty simple. To follow in that regard. But yeah, this men's hockey team, they get both victories like we kind of mentioned. We start on a Friday night, St. Cloud in front of an attendance of just over 2,300. Miami, again, 7-18-2 on the season. Again, we talked about it, 6 less wins than the Huskies overall in the year. So take that what you will. The NCHC has not been kind to them, but I mean, just throwing that out there. Miami actually outshot St. Cloud in this one, 20-19. 6-5 Huskies in the first, 7-4 Miami in the second, and 9-8 St. Cloud in the third. So I mean, like I said, it wasn't exactly a wide open hockey game by any means. Both teams scored on the power play. Miami had only 1 opportunity. St. Cloud had 3 chances for them, but it was the Huskies who come away with the victory off of a pair of first period goals. Jack Peart got the scoring started fairly late into the first period, just underneath the 5-minute mark. Nick Port's Cooper Wiley tallying assists on this one to get the Huskies in front.
Ethan Aucoin has it. Back over along the wall as that shot from a sharp angle. Sent in, save made. Over to the right side, a shot and a score. And the pass came from behind the net to the left side. It was Jack Peart who snuck.
Bruno Rivera was out of sorts a little bit on that. A couple players came back to try to defend it for him to help out. That's Reichwitz that comes over to help out. And Bruno kind of got caught up.
I like the compete level. You win a puck battle on the near side. You keep the play alive. Guys crashing the crease. Good to see a defenseman collapse down. And for that one-time opportunity, Nick, what did you see on that play?
I love the net front presence, right? Because at the end of the day, the shot comes through. It's not a shot you're looking to score on. You're just trying to funnel pucks toward the net. But because you're taking away the vision, he's unable to field it cleanly. There's a rebound loose. As you mentioned, you win the puck battle. You go behind the net. As you mentioned, Jack Peart reads it, collapses down, presents himself as a shooting option. Nice one-timer, lifts it over the shoulder. That's great execution on that play.
Yeah, and then Teddy Langerbach would take a slashing minor, and a minute 57 later, Jack Peart himself would find Werner Mietinen and Zach Okabe for his 7th of the season on the power play. Huskies lead 2-0 after 1.
Peart back at the blue line has it. 40 seconds gone on the power play as Peart back and forth with Werner Mietinen and feeding it down low. Okabe shoots and scores. Okabe below the circle on the right side got the feed and then just spun it in.
Just pour it on. We saw that in that Saturday night game up at St. Cloud State as Okabe gets the goal. The assist on this to Peart, as well as the other assist going to Werner.
I love the heads-up mentality. It's not often you see guys, a lot of times they're going to get that puck in that bumper position down near the crease and try to kick it to the other side. I just love the patience to be able to turn and just look and realize, hey, the short side was open.
Wide open. 100%, right? It's so easy in a power play, Noah. I know that you and I could probably attest to this when you're playing. There's just a timing mechanism that's in your head, right? It's just almost, sometimes you just kind of go into automatic mode there. Good read there also at the blue line to find that seam on the diamond there. And then as you mentioned, Zach Okabe head up the whole way, just says, and probably maybe a half second surprised that it was that wide open. And instead of trying to force a play to the other side, just takes what's given and beats the goaltender's short side. You got to love that execution.
Yeah, I like that play. And the fact that the Huskies, it's been a while since they've necessarily been in the driver's seat at the end of period number 1. I mean, we've seen some 1-0 scores or things like that, but 2-0 is an okay lead. Some say the worst lead in hockey, but the counter argument to that is I don't think any coach, I don't think any coach would scoff at being up by 2, but nonetheless, the lead would be cut in half, 2 minutes and 23 seconds into the middle frame. The Redhawks with a power play goal of their own.
Behind the net and wait for some help from Axel Kumlin. You see the line change as Waldron up ahead. Barbolini on there. His cross-ice feed. Fletcher shoots and scores! Ravens Batalans rather, not Fletcher. It's Batalans cutting down.
And gives it up to Barbolini on the left side. And then you see, if you're on NCHC TV, you see Waldron calling for it, but wisely Matthew Barbolini sees the open man on the far side. That's Batalans, and he snipes that one past the goaltender.
Great play in transition. I like the execution, moving essentially from east to west while going north-south, then finding that flat drop pass. The extra forward is wide open, essentially on the power play when you're down a man. And yeah, good release, glove side high, goal scorer's goal for sure.
Yeah, and you wonder if the Huskies maybe got a bit too aggressive too on that penalty kill forecheck. A lot of space in between the defense and the two forecheckers. And then you got to love that center lane drive too, which opened up that seam pass through the middle there. As you mentioned, great execution east-west. And then, just grip it and rip it, right? And when you can have a quick release like that and find that, that top side corner there, can't really be upset about that. That's great hockey there by Miami. A good rush opportunity on the power play, right? That's not something that St. Cloud loves to give up very often, but you got to hand it to the Redhawks here. Great execution on that play.
Yeah, great release, like you mentioned. 11 minutes later, it was the Miettinen brothers who found Dylan Anhorn for his 5th of the season to regain a 2-goal lead, and the Huskies took that 3-1 lead into the second intermission.
Ball comes back up the right side, played back to the point. As Anhorn feeds to the left side, he gets right back, he shoots and scores. A little give and go, and Dylan Anhorn gets the feed coming down the middle and roofs that.
That's going to be Werner Miettinen, but what a great give and go. Seen it again on NCHC TV, right back to him. There's an opening, the sort of sees part there, and he sees that opening. Dylan.
I mean, gorgeous give and go to the captain who finishes it off. It's not easy making that pass, the initial play from Anhorn down low, and then it comes back, essentially making guys overcommit defensively. I don't think people necessarily appreciate how good of a goal that is sometimes.
Yeah, and it's when you talk about a give and go, right, and especially from, an active defenseman like Dylan Anhorn, right? You see this two ways, right? Noah, is that sometimes you'll see defensemen where they give the puck up in that sense. It's a good little area pass and they just sit at the blue line, right? They see the traffic and they don't really activate with that. So that allows the winger to basically be by himself. Now, when Dylan Anhorn creeps in that slot, then you could see that winger come through and he bypasses Dylan Anhorn. He actually goes to the wide side there. And, definitely a coaching moment there is, he's on the wide side. He's a sharp angle. That's the least threat there. If anything, maybe you want to take away Dylan Anhorn. But again, quick give and go, as you mentioned. And then again, off the stick in a hurry and through the bodies in front. I'd imagine the goaltender didn't have a great look at it. A good shot low, unable to pick it up. 3-1 Huskies.
Yeah, and able to shoot across the grain, too, as a left-handed shot on the glove side. That's not an easy play.
No.
Speaking of not easy, well, the Huskies made it a little bit too easy. 13 seconds into the third period. This now a 1-goal contest. John Waldron got the Redhawks within 1.
Drop at center ice, but having a puck and a roll around along the wall, brought in on that left side as Fletcher coming down, sends a shot in, rebound, score! Right down the middle, Waldron had the puck come back to him right in the slot.
put the puck on net. And that's exactly what happened there. Fires a big-time shot that Bassey's unable to handle, as you see it again on NCHC TV in slow motion. Waldron right there settles the...
Kind of an uncharacteristic poor rebound control. I think that's one that maybe Dominic Bassey wants to have back, but at the same time, guys in front have to pick up their man on the weak side. Rebound opportunity in the back of the net. Not the way you want to start a period.
No, and honestly, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like that was a pop play. The pass off the pad. I feel like that was an intentional shot to get that rebound. Again, one stick was covered there. It was the most closest to the crease. Unfortunately, the second layer there was wide open. And I don't know if you saw that, when Miami entered the zone, it seemed like a couple of Huskies were also overcommitting on that near side boards there. So as the play moved towards the net, a bit of a defensive collapse there in terms of not trying to pick up that man there in the slot. But either way, Miami takes advantage, and it's now a 1-goal game.
But it wouldn't take long. Our last highlight of the night, we had a goal at the 3:27 mark and 4:17 mark, the second coming with the extra attacker. First one was Barrett Hall's sixth from Jack Peart and Vieti Miettinen, who had a 2-point game, as did his brother. And then Cooper Wiley, his second of the year, also a multi-point night for him. Tynan Ewert and Zach Okabe, also 2 points for him as well, capping off a pair of goals in quick succession, and the Huskies would take this lead all the way to the finish.
Throwing the puck, gets it back up here. Long range shot, blocked down in front. Hall trying to redirect, tracks it down. He shoots it, scores. Oh man, what a lucky shot that was. Had eyes. Barrett Hall
doesn't do it in transition, as Barrett Hall, the freshman and NHL prospect, gets his 6th of the season. Assisting on that is Jack Peart, as he has been involved in 3 of the goals tonight.
Some help as he'll go behind the Miami net. Extra attacker on now for St. Cloud State with a delayed penalty. Here comes Ewert down, feeds one over to the right side, shot, score. Cooper Wiley on the backside with the extra attacker. Puts it by Bruno.
Goal scored by Cooper Wiley. Assists are going to go to Tynan Ewert, and other assist will go to Zach Okabe. And 5-2, just like that. The Redhawks were just down by.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, you try to steer a puck to the corner, it ramps up on your stick, I think, is a netminder. That's one that you'd like to have back. Kind of a painful one for the Redhawks to stay in that hockey game. The second one with the extra attacker, good cycle play, good scissor crossing action there, and then backdoor pass and almost actually kind of making the save, but a good look. Huskies doing a good job getting to the net front there and making it a final of 5 goals for St. Cloud. Nick, this was a game that, again, I think St. Cloud needed a Friday night. I think they needed a Friday night in regulation to feel a little bit better about themselves. And we'll kind of allude to this when we get to Saturday's game as well, but I know it's Miami. But St. Cloud has kind of been missing that in recent, is kind of the ability to kind of like put the dagger in and twist a little bit. And I think that succession there gives you an idea of mental resolve to get kind of kicked in the mouth at the start of period number 3, and you don't look back, and you tag a couple on in quick succession.
Yeah, and when you go back to the shot on goal totals through the period, a pretty careful game, I think, by St. Cloud. We've seen a couple of the more recent results where I think defensively, Brett Larson wants them to be more responsible in that area of the ice. So this team is certainly, I think, coming into this weekend was playing with, trying to be very careful in that regards to not give up mistakes. We'll take advantage of it when we can, but let's play a good structured game. As you can see right there, 6-4 and 9 for 19. But as it doesn't matter if it's 19 or 40. If they're quality chances, that's fine. You held Miami to 20. That's not terrible, right? At the end of the day, I think Brett Larson would be happy with the overall defensive effort. And this team just, again, they're built differently where when they get a lead, they're much more comfortable. This team, at least this year, has not, at least in my vision, has not shown an ability to really be able to claw back in games. They've done it a couple of times, but I don't think they're comfortable in that position. So I think that first goal, I think getting that lead is super important for this Husky squad. And it just seemed like once they got that 2-0 lead, they relaxed. Yeah, a couple of goals went in. It was a 1-goal game, but they didn't panic. They still stuck to their structure, and they were able to get a couple in the third to pull away and seal the victory. that to me is there was the recipe for success this weekend. And as we discuss for game number 2 coming up here, seemed to be replicated, and that's night number 2.
Yeah, and I think allow them to relax. You talk about night number 2, attendance of just under 2,600. Huskies win 3-1 in this one, outshoot Miami 36-22. So a little more characteristic of kind of what we've seen. 16-6 in the first, 12-9 in the second, 8-7 in the third. St. Cloud did score on one of only 3 power play opportunities the entire game. They only had 2 themselves. Perfect on the kill, 1-for-1. Adam Ingram, the only minor penalty. But he redeemed himself, of course, scoring the first goal of this hockey game on the power play, so I suppose it works out in the end. It was actually a bench minor for too many men that the Huskies capitalize on. And also Isaac Posh stopping 21 of 22 in this one. Another good showing for him, albeit against Miami, but still doing exactly what he needed. But as we mentioned, Adam Ingram, his 8th of the season. Kyler Kupka and Vieti Miettinen got the scoring started. The Huskies do take a 1-goal lead into the second.
Back and forth with Inord. It's Miettinen down low. The cross-side speed, and Ingram on the backside shoots it, scores. Tic-tac-toe, great feed. Kyler Kupka slid it.
It is. I mean, coming into this weekend, they're 21.3%, so doing well. But I would have the way that they move the puck, the way they move away from the puck.
And a lot of strong puck movement east-west, especially on special teams, I thought, throughout this weekend. And, something when you're playing against a quote-unquote lesser opponent, maybe that opens up a little bit for you and you get a little bit more confidence snapping the puck around a little bit. But, yeah, another pretty play, Nick. Very similar to the goal we saw from the first night, except it did go across the crease. But I guess tell the listeners at home, what's kind of the underrated play about that all starts about 85 feet above where it ends up?
How about the decoy by Vieti Miettinen, right? This is where, when you've got a shooter, a Holby Baker candidate, right, where he can pass, he can shoot, and he moves from that half wall to the top, right? What ends up happening is Miami knows. He knows he's a shooting threat. He's scored from there many times. He can also thread the needle, but it's not his normal position. To me, what I saw was Miami got puck watching, and especially on that weak side defenseman. As he moved up, everybody just kind of crowded toward the middle. Vieti saw that lane. It was a quick one-touch pass across. People forgot about the backside. So to me, it was that read by Vieti Miettinen. It probably was a design play to let him shoot, honestly, but he elected to defer to that pass. Again, good cross ice, good one-touch passing, wide open back in the net.
Yeah, and I love, like you mentioned, being able to walk the blue line and create that opportunity, bring guys with you. You open up what is still technically the strong side, because the play originates from the same side, that right side, glove side of the ice. Kick it down low, and then everybody, knowing last night that's where the goal was scored, everybody collapses and tries to attack the strong side, and then the weak side's wide open. Beautiful goal. The Huskies would be challenged, though. It would be all knotted up at 1 heading into the third period. 13 minutes into the second, Miami would score the lone tally of period number 2.
Feed it through traffic and was tipped, went to the wall, and getting to it are the Red Hawks says that'll be Barbolini. Gives it off, Bolton coming around. Here comes Bolton on the backhand, gets a shot, he scores! Dylan Bolton able to backhand it through.
And he's had a couple of great opportunities, so nice for the Miami fans to see him rewarded as, again, Posh in the right position. He makes the initial save, sort of, but the puck trickles in behind him, unable to really redirect that to the place that he wants it to be. Posh, though, he had set up, went really well, so you got to give a lot of credit to Dylan Moulton.
Just one of those that catches the inside crook of the arm, actually even the jersey. In fact, if it probably just goes straight through underneath the blocker side, it probably goes wide of the net, and it just catches the jersey. I mean, just one of those unfortunate backhand shots that's hard to read for a goaltender.
Yeah, and I think you and I would agree that Posh was probably off his angle just by a tad, a bit overcommitted on that strong side there. But either way, he gets a piece of it, but not quite enough. As you mentioned, sometimes it catches the equipment. Sometimes you get a rolling puck or a bounce and it skitters wide. Unfortunately, heads right toward the post and it knocks in. But yeah, no, not much you can say about that one. Just an unfortunate bounce, and for Posh, maybe a bit more to the strong side than maybe he probably would have liked. He's not going to love that goal. Would probably like to have that one back, but nonetheless, not much you can do about it. tied up at 1.
Yeah, and the guys picked him up 10 minutes into period number 3. Vietti Miet, and another multi-point night for him. Boy, has he looked good. He's been a real bright spot for this Huskies squad. Barrett Hall telling a multi-point weekend with an assist, and then Dylan Anhorn, of course, his 6th of the season, 2nd goal in as many nights. Also, no surprise, of course, that he looks good, getting the Huskies in front for what would be the eventual game winner.
Beating Miedner turning it around, but back up ice, but his pass broken up by Miami. They can't clear it out though. Werner Miedner or Megan Hall has it over to Anhorn, who shoots and scores. Another turnover by Miami, and Dylan Anhorn
Fires that one in the back of the net. And what a great feed to find him, as that was sent all the way across the ice by Barrett Hall. And those turnovers, when you give the puck away.
Bit of a blind pass, but I mean, you've got 2 red sweaters on the opposite side. The first one takes the defenseman away, and the second one is a flat drop pass, able to put it in the back of the net. Nick, anything specific that really stands out to you about that one?
I just think for me, the read by Anhorn, honestly, on this play, and then obviously you got to win that puck battle there by Barrett Hall. To me, it's kind of a broken play to begin with. Barrett Hall then decides, okay, we're going to settle this down. A good shield in the puck. It's, as you mentioned, kind of a blind drop pass toward the middle. But again, it's that active defense coming in and collapsing down, reading the passing lane. And then again, as if you're crowded up in the slot, let it go through sometimes. Maybe you're tied up, but Anhorn's right there. And then again, a quick release. It looked like the goaltender was expecting a little bit. He hesitated slightly as the puck went toward the crease. Sometimes that's all you need. Anhorn made no mistake and just ripped it over his right side shoulder. Huskies get that all-important insurance goal.
Absolutely, and 18:01, just under 2 minutes left in this hockey game. Kyler Kupka found Zach Okabe for his 8th of the season. We talked about it being able to twist the knife a little bit. This was right before Miami was getting set to pull their netminder. St. Cloud didn't wait for the empty net. They were able to tally at 5-on-5.
To hustle back in as the Huskies took one away near the blue line, and it come right down low, a shot and score. Zach Okabe snuck in on the backside, and I don't think Bruno Rivera's really ever fully got back into position. The Huskies hustled down and got a cross-ice feed off the wall from the left side, and Okabe cutting down the right side gets insurance with 1:59 to go that they put this one out of reach for Miami. And well, credit that play all to the hustle of Kyler Kupka.
Well, Kupka gets it, and both players involved in that.
Miami loses that puck battle along the half wall. Play doesn't get out, and everybody's puck watching on that near side. And Zach Okabe said, "Thank you very much." That's about one of the easiest goals that I think he's going to score in his college career.
Yeah, and how about the forecheck execution, right? Noah funneling that puck to the corner, good wedge, and then again, as you mentioned, that puck gets loose. It's a quick shoot across the ice there, and then as you mentioned, Zach Okabe with an easy tap in. Miami really puck watching there. I don't think they were expecting that play to develop that way. It just didn't. If you're Miami there, you can't turn the puck over there. There was no support, but at the end of the day, Huskies made him pay, and again, that's exactly how you want it to force the play up the wall. You seal that wall again on the opposite side of the defenseman there. Had nowhere to go. Pick up the loose puck, shoot it across, easy tap in. Yeah,
I thought Isaac Posh looked good in all the other contests that he faced in terms of shot volume. Even the one that went in, I mean, just kind of one of those where shooter drives the net, able to create kind of an uncommon scenario and able to bank it in off the crook of your arm. I mean, what do you do about that? Nonetheless, so the Huskies take the victory. They, of course, improved to 14-9-5 on the season. NCHC play, if memory serves me correct, let me just pull it up quick, 10-4-4 in the NCHC, which when you started 7-0-1, not exactly the greatest second half so far, but I think momentum in the right direction. Good time still, I think, for the bye week. We don't say that all the time, but I think a good time for that. We take a look at the upcoming schedule. The Huskies only have 3 weekends left. Western Michigan at the tail end of February, and then, of course, the following weekend, they'll be at home against Denver. So the last 4-game home swing of the season in the regular season, and then Minnesota Duluth on the road the 8th and 9th of March to finish things out. A lot could still change here, but the Huskies, hopefully it's not the last 4 home games that they play this season, depending on how they do, of course, throughout the remainder here. But Nick, what do you take from a weekend like this against an opponent that on paper they should have taken care of? They did take care of them. They took care of them in regulation. Hint, hint, North Dakota. and both goaltenders look good, and St. Cloud executed at the right time.
At the end of it, you did what you had to do, right? It is not much you can say about it. This would be a much different conversation if even we're talking about one loss.
Yeah.
Because of just where they are in the pairwise, right? So I think
or even a shootout win, right? Like,
yeah, it wouldn't, because that would be a tie, right? It'd be a tie against Miami, which unfortunately is down in the pairwise, and where St. Cloud is at right now. You're in the bubble territory, and I think more than anything, the bye week almost comes at the worst time for me. And I know we could probably debate this, Noah, but you're feeling good. Again, it's been a struggle since the holiday break to get wins in regulation or wins of any kind for that matter. You kind of want to continue that momentum. And now you got two opponents at home that are above you in the pairwise. So you have an opportunity. You've beaten Western Michigan in Lawson twice. They're going to need at least to get a split there against the Broncos, as you can see on the screen. And then Denver, you have them coming up. So at the end of it, that's going to set them up for what would be a pivotal matchup against Minnesota Duluth to finish off the regular season. St. Cloud could really help themselves over the next couple of weeks. I think they need to take no less than 2, if not 3 out of 4, with Denver sitting at 7th, as you see the pairwise standings continue to scroll up and down. So, I mean, the best part is the losses here don't necessarily hurt you as bad, but wins could certainly help you climb up a little bit, depending on some of the other results around the pairwise. No, I'm curious as to know what your thoughts are. It's not do or die, but I think at the end of the day, I think you have an opportunity if you're St. Cloud to try to get yourselves elevated in the pairwise standings and try to put yourselves in a more comfortable position coming to second, third week of March.
Yeah, St. Cloud's actually in an all right spot here. As you mentioned, Denver, a couple victories against them would go a long way. Western Michigan, you've already had 2 regulation victories, so you can't do any worse in the pairwise against the Broncos.
Right.
So, Denver at 7, Western at 11, and then so we got to scroll. Yeah, 25. So that Duluth series is really kind of the one where I think you feel a little bit more on edge, kind of heading in. But at the same time, if you're St. Cloud, you have a couple weeks to kind of remedy the situation. I don't agree or disagree as far as when the bye week should be. I think for St. Cloud, I still don't know that they're playing well enough that the bye week necessarily hurts them, if that makes sense. I think it's still a good time for them to reset. Certainly haven't had the greatest of second halves. I don't know what it is. It's been the men's team. It's certainly been the women's team that we're going to get to in just a moment. It's been the Minotauros as well, too. I don't know what it is, but second half January, February swoons are in full swing right now for everybody not named the Bismarck Bobcats. So,
seriously.
although the Toros did get a win yesterday, but they were terrible on Friday, but that's neither here nor there. But for the men's team, a little bit of traction, like you said. I think good enough where Miami gives you a bit of a confidence boost, helps you relax a little bit. But that's where, if you're St. Cloud, really, the only series you have to fear is that Duluth series at the end of the season in the middle of March. Western Michigan can't necessarily hurt you really that much. Now, you're going to need as many points as you can get, because sitting in 13-14 is not the place you want to be. You'd like to elevate 2 or 3 spots and just put yourself in. It doesn't matter if you're a low 3 seed. Put yourself in that spot. Don't leave it up to chance. The second thing about that is, Denver, obviously a victory against them or 2, could go a long ways into just kind of helping you push in that regard. But yeah, Duluth, you can't drop the games against Duluth. 25 in the pairwise. That's not going to help you. That series could easily be the difference between you being a low 3 seed or you fighting for your life in the NCHC Frozen Face-Off in a couple of weeks. So that's where the Huskies have to take a deep breath, regroup this week, start working on the process. I know that sounds odd. You're like, well, we need to win hockey games. You do. But at the same time, start working on the process of being better against Western, being better against Denver. The results will come. Ultimately, you're gearing up for the playoff before the playoff, which is the games against Duluth, because those have the potential to really burn you. Huskies have to take care of business. I think for the men's team, bye week doesn't hurt them, I guess. I don't know that it helps, but I certainly think it can be well utilized and could be a turning point. So Brett Larson and company have to be on their toes to make sure it's a productive week and a half. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I don't disagree with that. I just more worry about the players, right? It is, you know, as we're going to talk on the women's side, right? The mental side of the game is, you know, this is where you really do separate yourselves, you know, the teams that are going to go places and the teams that, you know, may struggle in this situation. And, you know, I do wonder where the confidence level, where the mentality is with this squad. And, you know, you just hope that when you finally do get some good building blocks, right? And again, we know it's against Miami, and I'm not going to take anything away from Miami, right? Again, I know their record is what it is, but I also don't think that they're as bad as their record says. I really don't. Yep. At the end of the day, I also think that, you know, like you mentioned, this is a good opportunity to kind of reset. And as you mentioned, G-Rob, because it's going to be, you know, yes, the structure, yes, it's going to be, you know, the X's and O's, but more so just the confidence, the mentality, the playoff mentality that you need to bring over the next 3 weeks after the bye week, which are really going to help you set up to be at your best when it comes to not only the remaining regular season matchups, more importantly, Noah, getting yourself primed for the NCHC Frozen Faceoff. Because again, as you mentioned, that meant that UMD series is going to really tell us what St. Cloud is going to need to do to best position themselves come March.
Yeah, well, you talk about reset. You want to talk about a group that needs one. Women's hockey right now, we're going to move over to them. If you not on the YouTube channel, the graphics says it all. They've lost 7 straight and 8 of their last 10. You talk about how big those games were against St. Thomas and Mankato. I mean, big difference makers there. You know, and granted, I would say strength of schedule, the Huskies have had one of the toughest in the second half, but at the same time, you got to put yourself up for success, and that's where we talked about those series as coming out of January, how important they were. But, you know, let's start on the opposite side here. Let's start on the pairwise. Huskies have not moved. They played Minnesota this weekend, so they're still at 10, one behind Duluth, Quinnipiac in that grouping as well. So the Huskies still sitting in an okay spot, one slot over 500 essentially, like it's a 516 I think is the winning percentage or something like that. St. Cloud currently 15, 14, and 1. So they will play next weekend. Boy, this is a massive series. You want to talk about a team that could use about 3 bye weeks right now? St. Cloud might be that team. Now, I don't think they play bad this weekend, but we've been saying that for a while against 2 opponents. Well, 3 technically. Wisconsin and Ohio State, 2 teams that should have beat the Huskies on paper. You know, top 2 teams as well. Minnesota was a handleable team for St. Cloud. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were certainly, you know, in that position where they could have easily taken some points. They were close both nights. You know, 1-0 score on that first night. Second game gets away with a couple of empty netters at the end, but it was a lot closer than I think the score, you know, indicated. Nick, you were there on Friday night. What is it about this St. Cloud team that they just can't find the extra gear they had in the first half?
So the men had the flying fins and the women's can't finish. That's really what it comes down to. Brian Idalski, we asked him after the presser, and you could see, and he was visibly frustrated with the fact that he felt like, hey, and this is not just with the Gophers too, against Ohio State, and then going back against St. Thomas and Minnesota State, again, a very home heavy schedule to start the second half. Just kind of felt like, you know, they're creating chances, but they're not putting the puck in the net, and they're that close. And I think he knows, and I think it's fair to say that if you go back and look at this losing streak, you know, they're really only, I mean, if the 5-1 against St. Thomas, again, a couple of empty netters, there's not really one game besides maybe that one at Wisconsin 5-2 that you could say they got it got away from them. Right. They were in every single game. And I think that's where the frustration is. And from Idalski's own words, I asked him, hey, like, you know, you've been in this position, you know, as a player where, you know, you feel like you're on the cusp of things, you know, you just feel like you need a bounce or something. What is it? And he goes, you know, why I want this to change now is we don't have the player on the roster that says, yes, we've lost 7 straight. It's okay. We're going to come back and do this. He's like, we're not panicking on the bench, but we don't have, shall we say, that swagger or that confidence to say it's okay. We just have to stick to what we do, and we'll be able to break through. They haven't had that yet. And And it's not like they're changing necessarily what they do, but it does feel like as the games that are tight go towards the later stages of the game, you do feel like that the sticks are being gripped a bit tighter, that maybe things offensively they start forcing things a little bit. And then unfortunately, as we know in hockey, that creates opportunities going the other way. So their goaltending has been excellent from Chobak up to Sani Ahola. So not much you can say. They just haven't had the goal support. And that's really it. I mean, it's you want to make it like this 3 or 4 factor, sort of puzzle that's plaguing this team for 7 straight. It really isn't. They've been playing well enough to win these games. They just haven't had the goal scoring to match it, to be able to pull away or to, shall I say, get themselves in a better position. So, and I think that's why it's so frustrating. It's different than in years past, where you go and you got walloped by Wisconsin, you get walloped by the Gophers, and you weren't even close, right?
Yeah.
And you're frustrated because you're getting kicked around the rink. Now the frustration is we're right there, and we feel like we played well enough to win. We just can't get enough in the back of the net.
Yeah, and started playing their hockey at the right time, about 2 weeks too late coming out of the holiday break, I think is probably what should be said. And unfortunately just one of those where it just hasn't had the grit factor to just kind of muscle one out, I think, if that makes sense, just to be able to kind of get over the hump. But nonetheless, we take a look at scores coming from this past weekend in the WCHA in general. Wisconsin, 17-0 combined finish against Bemidji State at the Sanford Center. The Beavers, of course, no match for the Badgers, unfortunately. 3-0 Mankato loses to Ohio State the first night, and 6-2 the second night. Duluth, 4-1 and 5-1 were the finals against the St. Thomas Tommies. So,
you mean Reese Hunt versus St. Thomas 4-1 on that first night?
Yeah.
4 goals for her, the former Bemidji State Beaver. My goodness, what a pickup that was for Minnesota Duluth. Holy cow.
Well, and you talk about the difference. We talked about those games against St. Thomas and Mankato. We take a look at the standings here. Ohio State ahead of the pack. They're going to take it home unless something wild happens. 67 points for them. Wisconsin at 60. The Gophers at 56. I still think Wisconsin's going to finish in that 2 spot. Duluth at 41 now with the weekend. The Huskies at 33. So again, you talk about either of those games could put them at 36 or 39. I mean, or somewhere in there in that realm. Nonetheless, though, you talk about 39 points. That's the best the Huskies could do after this weekend. Their opponent coming up is the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. So they could still give themselves a chance heading into the final week, but it's going to take a gargantuan effort this weekend. There's no doubt about that. At some point, as much as we've talked about it, Nick, they've got to find a way to find a way. If they want a chance at that home ice spot, no doubt they're going to get Duluth in the first round of the playoffs. That's pretty much signed, sealed, delivered, I feel like right now. So, that's obviously going to be key. And as we mentioned, Bemidji State, the final matchup for the Huskies coming out after Duluth. The Huskies will be on the road from here on out, by the way. No more home games for them. Their last was, of course, the Gophers. So St. Cloud has a chance if they do well against Duluth. If they could string 4 wins together against Duluth and Bemidji, things could get a little bit interesting. But let's rewind back to the game that you were at, Nick, the last one at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center, attendance of 400 in this one. St. Cloud actually outshoots Minnesota in this one. 24-20, 9-5 in the first, and then dead even, 8-8 and 7-7 in periods 2 and 3. The Gophers, their lone goal comes on the power play, 1 for 3. The Huskies missed on their lone opportunity, and it was Abby Murphy in the second period, about 2/3 of the way through the period, her 28th from Madison Kaiser on the man advantage, and unfortunately for St. Cloud, that was all that was needed for the Gophers.
Try to step up and get it away. Here's a chance for the Gophers. Weak side, Transley score!
Backdoor tap in, drive in the lane, able to get the weak side towards the crease, and that was all that was needed, unfortunately, for the Gophers. But Nick, I'm glad you were there on Friday. 1, because great call, but number 2, you can speak a little bit more to this game being 1-0. What was the feel of this hockey game? How close were the Huskies to at least pushing this one past regulation?
I mean, it was close. There were a couple of grade A opportunities, both in the first and the third. I feel like in the second, historically for the Huskies, that's always been a bit of a struggle for them. But both teams, you could see that the emphasis was on disrupting the zone entry with possession. You could really see that. It was back and forth. And really for the Gophers, a couple of stretches where they had sustained zone time, but really, it's not like they dominated, right? This was a very close game. And again, we go back to the frustration piece. With those opportunities that the Huskies had, there were a couple of goal mouth scrambles where, again, you're able to lift one over a pad or find the loose puck. This game is tied. And going back to that goal for Abby Murphy, that deflects off a couple of Husky sticks on the way over too. So asked JoJo Chobuk about that at post game, and she was like, "Yeah, no, it definitely hit one of our sticks too." I think Murphy did get the last touch on it, but at the end of it, it's frustrating when you're trying to do the right things on offense, can't get a break, and then defensively also, trying to get sticks on pucks, and then it takes a bad bounce the other way too. So, but there really wasn't any grade A chances for the Gophers, maybe 2 or 3 the entire game. So, and again, like this is a good Husky squad. Again, 2 years ago, we would have dreamed to be within a goal of the Gophers and to be going up and down the ice with them and not be caught on our own zone 2 to 3 minutes at a time, right? Where you're dead tired and all you're trying to do is just throw the puck out of your zone, get an icing just to reset yourself a bit. Huskies had a chance to win this hockey game. They had plenty. And it just stinks that with those opportunities that you got with the Gophers, weren't able to put it away. So, and again, you could see the frustration on the bench. You could see it with some of the players after the fact, and you can certainly see it with the head coach after the game because they knew they had a chance and just couldn't capitalize on their chances.
Yeah, and a chance to at least get some points beyond regulation, I think, is kind of the main point. Yep. 28 faceoff wins, 30 losses, 48% in the dot, not too shabby. JoJo Chobak, 19 of 20 for her, like you mentioned, the lone goal deflects off her paddle and into the back of the net on the power play. So kind of a tough one. On Saturday, of course, quick turnaround for this. You play at the late night game on Friday, and then you play at 2:00 for the Saturday matinee, so to speak. Down at Ritter Arena, you have to travel as well, so that's a quick turnaround. The Huskies ultimately lose 5-1 in the second night, attendance of just over 1,800, but this was not a 5-1 hockey game, much closer than that one. Shots 29-22, the Gophers much better in the second night. It was 1-1 after 40 minutes of play. The Gophers tack on 4, including 2 empty netters to seal the deal. 10-7 was the margin for shots for the Gophers in the first, 11-10 in the second, 8-5 in the third. Only one power play opportunity either way. It was for the Huskies. They missed 32 even in the faceoff dot, exactly 50% for both squads. We mentioned Abby Murphy. Well, she was the lone goal scorer at period number 1. Her 29th of the season, just under the 5-minute mark, had the Gophers ahead heading into the second 20 minutes.
He scores her 29th of the year.
Just an off-angle shot from Madison Kaiser. It bounces, and then Abby Murphy, she gets that near goal line.
And I mean, what do you do about a bounce like that? A shot that gets blocked, it goes all the way to the weak side. Really nothing that Sania Hola can do about that. She stopped 24 of 27 in this one. But yeah, just talk about it. Sometimes the hockey gods don't smile on you. When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, and you talk about bounces, and then it goes to the nation's leading goal scorer in Abby Murphy, right? And Ahola was tracking it, right? She tracked it the whole way, but unfortunately, when you go up against, an HCA goaltenders of the year semifinalist against the nation's best goal scorer, it's the Gladiator versus Goliath or whatever the hell you want to call it. 2 great players on the ice, and unfortunately for Abby Murphy, great shot, able to find a little bit of a hole there, I think, between the post and the glove, and is able to beat a hole there. So again, not getting the bounces from the hockey gods up top, but again, just crazy bounce. What are you going to do?
Yeah, St. Cloud would respond, though. Avery Farrell, 7th of the season, just before the 5-minute mark, and we would be 1-1 heading into the final 20 minutes.
Some room, shoots and scores, and the Huskies have tied. Avery Farrell for St. Cloud, and Farrell had some room and finds an opening top left corner.
That one was brewing. There was just 2 defensive zone turnovers from the Gophers there.
Good seeing eye shot through a screen. I like the release, obviously the ability for F1 and F2 to get to the front of the net, create that screen, and allow the netminder to not be able to see it. Pretty good zone entry, pretty good execution for the Huskies there.
If if there's going to be one storyline from this whole season for St. Cloud, it's going to be Avery Farrell. That to me is the best storyline. Just as a sophomore and transferring over from Franklin Pierce, we talked about the story before, but didn't really have a spot in the lineup. And Brian Idalski said to start the year has worked her way into a top 6 role, and she shoots the puck. She shoots the puck. She sees the ice well. She makes the right reads. She uses her feet, and she has no shyness about letting it go. And as you mentioned, this is something that I know I've talked about. I know you've talked about. You got to get more pressure in front of these opposing netminders. I think St. Cloud for, the next step in the offensive progression is, A, they're not shooting enough. And 2, when they are shooting, it's sharp angles. There's no traffic. It's easy stops, right? This is the next level of consistency with the St. Cloud State women's team to continue to do this more throughout the game. These goaltenders are great. I'm not taking anything away from them. But again, anybody in that position, you can't see it. Likely you can't stop it.
Yeah, certainly. 13 seconds into the third, the Gophers would get back on the board. They would not relinquish a lead or at least be tied throughout the majority of the weekend, and they make it 2-1. This would be the eventual game winner.
Wow.
Here's Bouvang for Minnesota. She's got it. Huber in front. She scores! What a feed! Minnesota finally finishes one off.
Well, I take my word back. What a pretty pass. Ella Huber banks one home into the gate.
And again, that's a tough one. Breakdown in coverage right off the opening faceoff. Weak side forward tries to come back and recover, but they're not able to do it. Just like that, Minnesota's off and running. They would take a while to score their next, though. Over 13 minutes, over halfway through the period. This, unfortunately, was the dagger that kind of sealed the deal, at least for the time being. The Huskies not able to climb back. And just like that, the Gophers make it 3-1.
Now it's 3-1, thanks to Maddie Kaiser.
And that play all starts by Madeline Wethington, drawing the St. Cloud players back in her own zone. And Madison Kaiser with this.
And I mean, what a release. What, like, through a screen, kind of just a little flick of the wrist. I mean, what do you do as a goaltender on that one? To their credit, like you mentioned, all 3 of the goals that were not empty netters that were scored, and including the one on Friday night, all goals around the crease where Minnesota had to work hard to really get to those areas of the ice. They were all flashy, pretty goals. I mean, it's not like they were, like you said, in years past where they were goals that beat a netminder that probably shouldn't have been in the back of the net. That goal beats any netminder any given night through a screen with that release.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too because St. Cloud, pardon me, they pride themselves off, really protecting the house, right? And with the Gophers, you kind of feel like they were able to spread them out a little bit. And again, no matter how well you defend, no matter what structure you have, I mean, there was bodies around her. Sometimes you just, you flick the wrist and it's not like you're aiming there, right? Sometimes you're just letting it go and seeing if you can surprise the goaltender. Not taking it away from the Gopher forward there, because that's one hell of a shot. And as you mentioned, for Sonny Ahola, not much you can do on that, especially when the play is coming. That's kind of a sharp angle too. Sometimes you don't even expect the shot to come through. Not only was it pinpoint accurate, but it had some zip behind it too. And that's just tough to where if you're expecting something else as a goaltender or maybe not expecting anything, especially with the traffic around her, that's a dangerous play there to come out from nowhere. So, like you said, hell of a shot. It's unfortunate that Sonny couldn't get a glove on that one. But again, got to tip your cap to a great shot here and there.
Yeah, great shot by Madison Kaiser for her 6th of the season. Ella Huber at the 18:44 mark would tally her 2nd goal of the period on the empty net. Ava Lindsay would add another just half a minute later. These both at 4-on-4. Emma Gentry and Abby Murphy, coincidental roughing minors. And the Gophers with 2 empty netters and Lucy Morgan stopping 21 of 22 take both games on the weekend.
Huber with a chance at an empty net. She had a couple of chances last night. Will not miss tonight, though. Minnesota here pretty much ices it. They'll have a 4-1 lead as Ella Huber crossed here for Ava Lindsay. Again, empty net, and Ava Lindsay will give a go. And the Gophers now just piling.
Like we mentioned, Nick, just unfortunately not able to solve this Gophers team. They certainly had multiple looks over the course of the weekend. It doesn't hurt them in the pairwise, as we talked about. Coming up the following weekend, a big series against Duluth. The Gophers, meanwhile, have Wisconsin, so things could get interesting there as well. A couple of primo matchups for teams near to each other in the standings. Ohio State has St. Thomas, Bemidji, and Mankato in the bottom spots, are the other matchups upcoming. But Men's team is off, women's team is not. They've lost 7 straight. How do they make sure the streak stops at that? And how can they go on a 4-game winning streak here?
Oh boy, I think, when I go back to December and the run they had against Ohio State, against the Gophers, and then it could have easily taken 2 from Minnesota Duluth. They lost in overtime, and then they beat Duluth handedly. It's tough because you want to be confident, but you've also lost 7 straight, right? I think you have to somehow find a pill of amnesia and be able to wake up with a clean head. I mean, that's really what I think it comes down to. And I think you got to play with playoff desperation here. The good news for St. Cloud is over the 7-game stretches, there's probably an 8 of 10. There's 2 of them that would love to have back. That's St. Thomas and Minnesota State. But again, Ohio State, number 1 team in the nation. Wisconsin, top 5. Minnesota is also, in the top 10. So you're still in a pairwise position. So you have to be able to shake it off somehow. And I think you just have to leave it all on the table this weekend and if there's anything you want to remember, is that you can beat this Minnesota Duluth squad. You have done it in the past. And I think now if you're going to empty the tank, you do it this weekend. So I think you got to play with a bit of a chip on your shoulder, leave it all on the rink, and just kind of go from there. I think you got to get a little bit greasy. Again, the offense hasn't been there for St. Cloud here in the second half of the season. And when it's not coming to you, whether it's pretty passing or off the rush, you simplify, you funnel pucks toward the net, you get bodies there. That's how Avery Farrell scored her goal. There was a lot of traffic in front. To me, that's how you do it. I think you have to simplify, and I think you just have to give an all-out effort this weekend. You're going to be on the road, too. So at the end of it, that's how I would do it. I'm curious as to you have any other ideas, Noah, because to me, it's not more... Hockey is there, but I think more so when you're in a 7-game losing streak, it becomes more of a mental battle than it is maybe the X's and O's.
Yeah, and I think simplifying is the correct answer, and just being able to be gritty and force plays towards the middle of the ice. One of the things that Duluth does really well is they've always been good at managing the game. They've always been good at managing the pacing of the game, managing each zone effectively. Transitional game's going to be especially important. When you're not doing well offensively, you start to get a little gun shy, you start to be a little bit hesitant about the way that you rush up the ice. Then all of a sudden, as a result, you put yourself in kind of a pseudo-defensive posture, and then suddenly you're chasing the game a little bit. So St. Cloud has to be the aggressor, has to put their foot on the gas. And the other thing we kind of talked about on the men's side, being able to relax a little bit. If the Huskies drop them both, it doesn't hurt you. Like, you're not going anywhere. At worst, you're going to be 5th in the WCHA. You're going to get Duluth in the first round. Whether or not it's going to be at home or on the road, that's the question we're here to answer. This is more about kind of building that confidence against this opponent, trying to do the right things to push you into 3 weeks down the road when you are ready for playoff time and it's for real, so to speak. I think just getting some of that momentum. You don't want to go into that situation where you've lost 10 of your last 12, you squeak by with a couple of victories against Bemidji State, who historically has played you well in the last matchup of the regular season as well. You don't want to leave anything to chance. You want to start doing things the right way. The results are going to be what they're going to be, but I think, yes, home ice is on the line, but at the same time, more about you getting back to the way you played in the first half is on the line. I think that's a great answer. The results have not been there, but like you said, the play has not been as lackluster as it was in the beginning of January. The beginning of January was disappointing. Since that time, the opponent level has gotten better. The Huskies have played better. You have to bring that energy level against another opponent that's above you right now and then finish the job against Bemidji State the following week. I think it's going to be a couple of really good matchups. In fact, the other thing that I was curious about too, just from a purely standing standpoint here, just paying attention to the final couple weeks of the regular season, should the Huskies get the job done, they would put themselves within 3 points of 2 points of Minnesota Duluth heading into the final week of the regular season. And Minnesota Duluth has Minnesota, the final week of the regular season. So certainly doable to earn a home ice spot. You've made it a little bit more difficult on yourself, but a good showing this weekend, I think, would cap things off.
Yeah, it would. And again, I think the focus here should be, as you mentioned, not necessarily fighting for home ice, but fighting to play better hockey, because I think at the end of it, you're still in a paralyzed position to make an NCAA tournament bid. I think that's the more important chase at this moment.
Yep.
And more so, again, it's, going back to the men's side, you talk about the process. I know it's cliche, but you're in this position where you have to go back to that. I think you do have to sort of take a step back, simplify, understand what, it's not about we're chasing a specific goal or whatnot. It's about let's get back to playing great hockey. How can we find an extra goal here or two? Because if you can do that, I think that goes a long way to springboard you to the next couple of weeks. So I'm not saying it's easy. As Adelsky said in his presser, because I asked him essentially, like, how do you communicate to the girls that, you're still playing well enough to win? It sucks that you're not getting rewarded for it, but how do you keep them focused, keep them being confident? And he goes, it's the $1 million question, right? Essentially, it's, how do I convince these groups of players that, we're doing enough, but also not enough. And, we can still hold our head high. It's not easy. And if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. So it's a tough spot for sure. But again, I think the Huskies could really benefit this weekend, especially against an opponent they know they've been sort of chasing / kind of going back and forth with. Yeah. It's going to be, the biggest weekend of the season coming up here next weekend up at Amsoil. So we'll see how they respond. I'd love to see a little bit more of a gritty affair too. They've been able to play that style. They played it with the Gophers early in the season. And again, it's been, minus Saturday's game, it was 3 1-goal games against Minnesota. And they were in every single one of them. So we'll see. They're going to have to go out and, show us that they're capable of and sort of forget that they're on a 7-game winning streak and try to see if they can turn the tides.
Yeah, and a couple of victories could change things in the pairwise as well and maybe eke you into that final spot as well, just to keep you a little bit safer. But should be a good one, of course, episode 199 next week. And then when we hit episode 200, the women's season will be recapped for the regular season. They'll be ready for the playoffs. Speaking of Duluth, the men's team will have one more week left against the Bulldogs before their NCHC quarterfinals as well. For Nick Maxon, I'm Noah Grant, and we will see you soon in the Den.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL!
Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.